Mafia. I like that. That's very good. Yeah, 1 liter Mafia is in the house. I like that. That's my jams. So tonight, first of all, let's get started. Today I put up a video, and it surprises me that this is the first time that I've done this video, and that's that I did a video on basically how to install a camshaft. Given the multitude of cams that I've swapped, you know, one or two, and I tell people, well, this cam does this cam does this. They all do the same thing. They're all turbo cams. But for years, I've been doing that and telling them these things about camshafts. But the reality is I haven't told them how to do it. Like, this channel is kind of tailored toward the do-it-yourself guy and the guy that's just learning about turbos and all that stuff. So it's important for me to do those kinds of things because I get asked that question a lot. Well, can I do that? Can a regular, anybody do that? Yeah, you can. And when I'm showing you how to do it, you can go through those steps, and take the little tips that I put in there, and you can do it. It's not that hard if you just have the confidence to do it. Go in knowing that, hey, good things are going to happen. Keep your fingers crossed, and all of that will work out. But it's good that I finally got that video up, and I may do some other of these. I did a whole bunch of stuff. What is that? Oh, Crown Royal. Nice. I did some videos for comp cams way back called Back to Basics, and other people have since copied that. So, but those are the kind of things, you got to show people. A lot of guys don't know how to put a carburetor on or a throttle bite or those kinds of things. So you take it off? Yep. All right, T, I'll see you, man. A lot of people don't know that. So I'm there to help give them that kind of information. This camshaft swap is a perfect example. And so like I said, I just can't believe that it took that long. It's just taken this long for me to actually do that. To do that video, but it's doing very well and everybody seems to like it, so that works out really good. The other thing is, as you can see back here, I even put a sign on it. So I'll get it a little closer. So this way, when you put the carburetor on top, of here, the fuel knows where to go. If you don't have a sign, then obviously the fuel doesn't know where to go. And I actually ran this, and the cool thing is it actually worked. Not like worked like it made a whole bunch of power. It actually worked like the carburetor went on there and bolted on there, and there were no fuel leaks and there were no problems. The carburetor didn't touch the ceiling. It was fairly close, but it didn't touch the ceiling. The fuel lines reached. All of that was good. I ran this on the single plane 2-piece intake from Holley. And then I also ran that naturally with I'm doing a video on carburetor spacers because I ran a bunch of testing with that. I ran it both on the carburetor spacers on the dual plane and on the single plane. And on the single plane, I ran an open spacer and a 4-hole tapered combo, which is a really good one. But it's interesting. And then I ran this. I ran this silliness. That's a big spacer. So it needs a new name. It's the Super Richie Mega Spacer is not enough. Somebody suggested the Tower of Terror 2, which I like. The Stratosphere. The Space Needle. Don't try this at home. There's all kinds of stuff. Freiberger even sent a couple of them because I sent him over pictures of this thing. And he said that he watched the divided single plane intake video also, which I thought was interesting. But this actually worked. Like I said, after we put it on there, I'd run the other spacers. We kind of had the tune, the spacer tune on it. And I ran it with this. The difficulty with running something like this, I ran into the same thing when I tried to stack all of the open carb spacers together, is the transition is the problem. It's, you almost can't have enough squirter because even if you squirt this in, it takes a long time. There's a big delay before it goes from there to there. And I want to make a clear one of these so that we can see all that happening, especially when you engage the nitrous. So what you do, the cure for that on the engine dyno is just to roll in easy. And also, it doesn't want to idle very well. Probably because it's held together by tape and silicone. And if you look at these are not like, there's a lot of movement there. So that's not ideal. But we weren't looking for ideal. We were looking for, excitement. And it actually made good power. I mean, it made power. It didn't make quite as much power as it did without the spacer, but it didn't kill it like the divided thing did. It was right very close to what it did with an open spacer. And one of the things that guys were asking about on the video that I put up about doing the divider in the single plane intake and then putting the spacer on top of that to show that, hey, look, it does something if you can join that together. They all wanted to know, the comment that I got a lot was, well, why didn't you run a spacer with just with the regular intake manifold? Why didn't you just put a spacer on the single plane intake manifold? And I did do that naturally. I mean, I'm going to test that. The thing is that especially on a design like that, that's a fairly good intake manifold, an open spacer doesn't show a lot. It doesn't make a big change in power. It did make a little bit, and I'll be able to show you that on the video that I'm going to do. But it's not dramatic. On a dual plane manifold, the effects are much more dramatic. The effects of a CARB spacer are much more dramatic, especially if you go to on a divided dual plane, you go to an open spacer. That makes a big difference. And then I don't think that I tried I think we were talking about doing a 4-hole spacer on the dual plane, but I don't think I did it. There's only so much time. I don't know if I would have, I don't know if running that on the dual plane would have done anything. It was just cool that it all worked out. Now that I've done that, I ran a bunch of carburation stuff because I ran carburation with the Sloppy Stage 2 cam and with the Brian Tooley cam. Now I've put the factory truck intake manifold and throttle body back on. I'm running it fuel injected rather than carbureted. So I'll have lots of comparisons here. I'll have the truck manifold versus a dual plane, the truck manifold versus a single plane. I have them with the Sloppy Stage 2, with the BTR. So I have a million different variations of this kind of testing, which will be good. The reason that I'm running that with fuel injection right now is so I can put on this. This is next. After running it fuel injected, I'm going to put this on with the E85 and run it. I'm not trying to make 1,000,000 horsepower. In fact, I don't even know that I'll let it rev to how far we're revving this thing. This is an L33 that I care about now. Now that I've run, it's got to have 100 pulls on it already from the wrecking yard. I'm sure it has at least that much, because it's probably got, I know it's got more than 100. It might have a couple hundred. It's got 70 or something, 75, 76, 80. I think it might have over 80 today. So it's got a lot, but it's still working good. It has its first oil change. It was really happy about that. Now we're running it fuel injected again, and then I've run this before, the same motor before, in fuel injected form with the truck Norris cam, and I have the truck Norris cam in it, and it's making the same power. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is good. The power curve difference between the long runner truck manifold and the dual plane will be interesting. On a single plane, I don't think it will be that quite as, I don't know that guys are choosing between those two things. Usually if you're doing a dual plane or doing a single plane intake manifold, you're looking at something that you want to make power at a higher engine speed. One of the questions I get all the time is, for some reason, people don't seem to understand what allows a motor to rev. And when we look at these long runner, probably because I'm telling them that long runner manifolds make more power down low, and I'm responsible for that. The truck manifold, we're revving the motor out to 6,700, and we could rev it to 7,000. It's just making peak power earlier than that, but it will rev to 7,000 without any problem. A lot of guys think that the truck manifold will restrict it and stop it from running up there. It won't. It just, the reflected wave is not tuned, so it's past its effective RPM range because of its runner length. It flows enough to do that. If we just shorten the runner length and did nothing else, it would make power up there. It has enough airflow. It's not an airflow thing. It's not being choked off. It's just that it's tuned to run at better at a given engine speed than it is at a higher engine speed. So I'm going to run the truck manifold, and we're going to run that. I'm running that on gas right now. I might also run it on E85. I probably will before I put the blower on, just so that I have the same baseline for this, because I'm not going to run this on pump gas, I don't think. Maybe I will. Maybe I will after I do the E85. We'll take timing out of it, and I'll run it on pump gas too, because everybody wants to know what it does on pump gas. So I probably will do that, and I'll do that second. But I don't want to run, like this thing I think is probably going to do 15 pounds of boost or something if we rev it high enough. And I don't know that I want to do that on a motor that doesn't have ring gap. It's just the way that it came from the wrecking yard. And so I should take it apart and do ring gap, but I'm not going to do that before I run this test because I only have a limited amount of time. So we'll have air to water intercooling. We'll have E85. We'll have, you know, I'll run it safe so that it will work and hopefully be happy. Fingers crossed. You never know. That's the thing with wrecking yard motors. You know, it could go at any time or they could last forever. This one looks like it's doing very well. And I like now that I've made and I might do a video on this, when I made the oil change, the oil pressure curve is better and it's higher. It's better everywhere. And I know people are going to say, yeah, but that's just temperature or you use a thicker oil. Neither of those things are the case. I've done this before. When we run these things and we run successive runs, the whole oil pressure curve will come down and down and down. It'll eventually stabilize at some point. I don't know how hot we could get it or how many runs we could do in a row, or we could just sit there and load it for 24 hours or whatever. But the more temperature that you put in, the more runs that you make, the whole oil pressure curve will come down. I'm talking about a comparison at the same temperature. So when we do a comparison at the same temperature, when the oil was bad and had 100 pulls on it from a junkyard motor that looks terrible inside, and it's the oil when it came out smelled like fuel, and because we were running E85 in it also. I just think that the oil was deteriorated, and I know that when we put new oil in it of the same kind, because I got the stuff from the same store and the same container, I use 530 in it, and I think it's a synthetic. I'll have to go look at it. I think it is. I think I stepped up and got the good stuff because it was an L33. You know, it's an aluminum one, deserves it. So I did that, and the oil pressure is better. So I'm going to do a story on that. And I saw the same thing. I've seen the same thing on the oil changes on my truck, and that's one way you can also start seeing when the thing needs an oil change. If you're driving a steady state at a given RPM, and now your oil pressure is lower than it was before, and you change your oil, and now it's higher. Especially I'm talking about a drive coming down Highway 5 to West Tech. You know, after 300 or 400 miles, it starts to stabilize. You get a pretty good test. So that's what's happening. I'm going to run the fuel injected motor. We're going to make some pulls on that. We could even make some pulls tonight if you guys want, if you guys behave, or if you don't, it doesn't matter. I'm going to run that NA, and then I'm going to spend the rest of tonight after I get off of here putting this on, and I'm obviously going to do a video on that. And I'm going to do multiple videos. We'll do the install, and I'll go over the things that we had to do to make this fit, to make it work. The very cool thing today was that, and I'm going to show you guys, because this is the first time this has ever happened to me. That's why I'm bringing this up. So if we take a look at the front accessory drive on this, I'll go ahead and show you guys. So if we take a look at the front accessory drive, there we go. So you can see, so I had a belt, this belt right here, that I just found at West Tech. There's some belts over there. So I put it on there, and it was very, very close. In fact, I'll show you how close it was. It was this close. So what I did is take a zip tie. I pulled the tensioner so that it was tensioned as far as it would go, and then use a zip tie to zip tie this, put the belt on, and that's how much shorter that I needed the belt. So I went into the Napa store that's nearby, got a belt, had to work with the guy behind the counter and tell him, look, this is a size belt. I need something that's 2 inches shorter than that, because that's about what that comes out to. So we need to look it up and find out where we are. Can we get something that's exactly 2 inches shorter than that? So we looked up that belt. Okay, we know what that is. Can we get something, you know, closer? And then you can't ever get exactly 2 inches. Maybe it's an eighth off here, an eighth off there. And so we found one, and that was close. This one was 108 3/4 of an inch. That one was 111. So it was close. So I was pretty close on my guess. And I put it on, and just squeaks over it. So it's perfect because we're going to get a little bit of stretch right after we start it and stuff. And so that will work perfect. That was one trip to the auto parts store, and that's the first time that's ever happened. Usually when I'm doing these custom blower things, which have been done a lot, it's me going back and forth to that auto parts store, 4 or 5 times at least. But now it looks like at least that is solved. I have and as a matter of fact, when I put the fuel injection, the truck manifold on the L33, I already had a file in it from running it previously on E85 with the turbo, with a 2-bar map sensor. And I think these are 80-pound injectors. So I already had a map set up for it. So I, hooked everything up and plugged it in. And even though it was on gas, it just fired right up. And then all I had to do was take some fuel away because it was too fat, because it's going to supply more fuel with the E85. And then once I did that, boom, it's in business. Now we're going to go back to E85 first on this, and then we'll come back to fuel and circle back around. But the nice thing about it is, once you have the tune right, once you have you're giving it enough fuel at every RPM range and in every boost level and stuff, then all you have to do is, the difference between fuel and E85 is you just take fuel away. It's pretty easy. So it will show that it's, if you are running E85 and then you put gas in it, it might show, instead of, on a boosted application and you're running it at 11.5 to 1, maybe it goes down into 9.5 or 9.7 or whatever it is. And then you just take away fuel and get it back up there. And, it's actually going to be pretty nice. So I'll be able to do that. And then when I run it on 91, I'm also obviously going to be taking timing away. So it's going to lose power from taking the timing away, but that's one of the things inherent with running 91 octane, and that's why the ability to run more timing and the extra power that you get just from the E85 itself, that's why it's so popular. But I understand that people don't have it everywhere. So, you can only run what you can run. That's why I want to try running more things on on 91, because guys can do that. In fact, in most of the places in the country, they have 93, which is even better than we have. So you can run another degree of timing or another pound or 2 of boost, whatever that equates to. Frosty cold beverage. So what else do we have? And then after the LS stuff, I'm going to, because I have an LS already up there, if I have enough time, I'm going to put the 4.8 up and just run it and make sure that it's okay, make sure that it's alive and well and becomes a viable player. After going through all that stuff and fixing the thing with my bag of used parts, I'd like to be rewarded for that. And I think the things that needed to be fixed probably were fixed. And so I'm hoping that it will fire up and work pretty well. So let's take a look at a couple of questions, and then what we'll do is we'll go in and we can make a poll on the fuel injected 5.3. Saturn V engines had 55,000 horsepower. Those are good. The parts counter guy was really good at Napa that I went to. Oh, classic. Richard, what was that plug in the timing chain cover in the last video that you did? So you didn't guess that? You didn't guess it what it was? Can anybody guess what I would use a hole in the timing chain cover for? Moon rocks or Earth rocks? Is that because we never went to the moon? Wouldn't you add timing? Would we add timing for 91 octane? Turbo drain, yeah, there, somebody got it. I'm sure lots of people got it in the comments in the video. That's what it was. And actually, it's interesting because on that L33, on that 5.3, that's the first time I've ever run a turbo drain into the front cover. It was convenient when I did it. And it's convenient for us because I have an electric water pump on there, and it's not in the way of, we're not running a belts and stuff there, so not normally. But if I do, it's easy just to plug like I did in that. It was a turbo drain for when I ran the comparison between the Brian Tooley Racing camshaft and the Truck Norris cam and the Sloppy Stage 2 cam when I ran them NA and then ran them under boost. When I mounted the turbo, which is up on that side, and then a drain going down into the timing cover, it worked pretty well. I think ideally I should have put it a little bit lower. Two things I was worried about in the placement that it's at right now. One, I was worried about the depth of that pipe plug and also the depth of the brass fitting that I put in. It was a barb fitting. I didn't want that to go in too far, obviously, and come in contact with a timing chain. And also, when we're draining oil into that, we're draining oil into the timing chain that's moving around too. I think below that would have been better, but it's probably fine. Probably all good. It ran good. I mean, the thing made good power with the turbo, which is, you know, we've come to expect. You just add boost, and all of a sudden you're a hero. Have you ever tested an engine with and without ceramic coating on pistons? No, I've not done that. That would be pretty elaborate test. And I don't know what you would test. I mean, we could test it for power, but I guess we could also test EGTs maybe if we ran it in the same configuration with the same timing and all that. It's a hole for poking your finger into. What I can do is take the plug out of the timing cover, and while it's running and making power, I can put my finger in there and tension the chain. What would I need to run coilover ignition with a CARB on an LS? Would I need the ECM and do the VAT delete thing? I don't know. You want to run a coil on plug? If you just run the factory coil packs like we did, the MSD ignition controller does that for you on a carbureted LS. That's the way that we ran this test. It just plugs right into the factory coil packs. You run the coils and stuff. I did my LS cam on our carport. Sometimes the hardest thing about doing a cam swap is getting that damper off. That damper bolt is like seriously tight. But the thing that's nice, and I showed that in the video, that especially the Milwaukee ones, if you have the Milwaukee turned all the way up, the electric ones, and especially if you have a real big battery pack like they have, I think that we have the Westhead guys, then, and you set it on 4, it will take those things off you usually. I remember on our pneumatic ones, it would not take them off, and then these electric ones would do it. Ceramic coatings test for temperature. You want to test exhaust temperature or temperature of the piston? I don't know how to test the temperature of the piston. I don't have that sort of technology. Took my son to school today and noticed that my fans are not kicking on. I got a notice from my son's school today, and apparently they had a bear in the area. So that was interesting. I saw, my wife sent me a photo from the police that they took of the bear up in a tree or something. Would the factory ECM run the coils if it didn't read injectors? The coils don't care about reading the injectors. You can unplug the injectors. Isn't there something about detonation reduction with piston coating? With thermal barrier coating, maybe. Although I think you can make an argument that if you are not putting heat into the piston, you're putting heat into the combustion. So would the temperature of the combustion go up then, if you're not transferring some of that? Low octane with coating and out. Todd, what's going on? heat load on cooling system and without ceramic coatings, as well as octane tolerance and total timing needed. That's not a test I can do on the engine dyno, because you would need knock detection for that. I did, Todd, so you delivered a motor. Cool. What was the MSD thing called for? It's the MSD ignition controller. That's the temperature of the engine overall temps. You mean like the external temperature? Cooler temps equal more horsepower? We can measure horsepower, so that would be the easy part of it. Ceramic coated headers lower the temps. A ceramic coated header lowers the temperature of the header, right? But not the air passing through it, not the exhaust passing through it. Tyler, is that question directed at me? I like the 3800 personally. Guys, I inherited a 72 Ford F-150. It's solid, but it has locked up drivers, front drums, and locked up solid tube barrel. It's manual steering. Should I get it running or sell it and replace? How hard? Stupid bug. How hard is it to get those things working? I mean, an engine swap's pretty easy. You know, any kind of wrecking yard engine. What is the best rev limiter for the engine? Almost all of the ECUs have some kind of rev limiter on them. The MSD ignition controller is $475. It's cheap. You should buy two. Ceramic coated headers significantly lower underhood temperatures. Yeah, because they're changing the temperature. They're keeping the temperature inside and having all that temperature go out the exhaust. That was my comment about ceramic coating the piston too, is that putting the temperature in the exhaust. I've been thinking what would happen if someone did an intercore system for an NA car and see how it affects inlet air temps. The problem with, and we've talked about this many times, the problem with an intercooler for an NA motor is it becomes a restriction. It has to be really, really big for it not to be a restriction on air being drawn through it by the motor. If you can pressurize it, which you do in a turbo setup, or that you do at Bonneville when you have airspeed, you could do it on the street too, I guess. But you want to have lots of airflow going to it so that you don't have a restriction inherent in those systems. If you just use like a 3-inch one, like you might on a turbo application, it's not going to work very well. It's going to be a restriction. '72 F100. Tyler, I turn sour when I feel someone has a beef with my Buick. I still have no idea what you're talking about. Who said something bad about your 3800? Not sure if it's been discussed, but your opinion, I noticed they didn't use the word thoughts, on the Holley Skyram. The Skyram results are already out. We know what it does, and it did what we would expect it to do of having first of all, my hat's off to the guys at Holley. It's an awesome thing. Even as an April Fool's deal, it's fantastic. And the fact that they did it and it looks awesome, and they did a good job, 3D printing in it, and it lived through dyno testing, which is all good. It wasn't designed. The designers didn't say, "Hey, we're going to do this because it's going to make a lot of power." They did it because it's going to be funny and it's gigantic and it's really high. It's silly, like that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, that's my homage to the Skyram. But they did it for a particular reason. They didn't do it because it was going to make a lot of power. A long runner manifold like that will enhance torque production down low, which it did. And then at the higher engine speeds, fell off, which is exactly what it should do. And so it's a really good thing that they did. Just like when they were talking about stacking all their moonshot deal that they did in the last year's April Fools. It's good stuff. When it's testing for the alphabet cams, that's what I was going to talk about after the blower. Is the thing after I do the LS stuff, if I have time, the Ford is next. Will the same MSD ignition box for the LS work with the 8.1? Yes, it will. I'm told that it will. What fuel do you recommend to run a standalone fuel system for nitrous? I'll have 93 in a car's gas tank and looking to spray 150 horsepower on a stock LS2. 150 horsepower can be run with pump gas if you take timing out of it. Or if you want to put race gas in it, I would put race gas in it. I wouldn't do E85 because you have to calculate ratios and stuff. I would just put some kind of race gas in. 100 would be fine. If you have something that's more than 100, it's not going to hurt anything. It'll be fine too. BTR recommends a small stall for the stage 2 truck cam. It would depend on what motor you're putting the truck cam in. If you're putting a stage 2 truck cam in a 4.8, I would think that that's stall consideration. On a 5.3 or 6.0, you probably could use a stock one. Electric turbo and intake temperature. I don't know what kind of question that is. Could you plumb the chili bomb is only 3 inches, I think, and that's 4, so it would be pretty restrictive. An absolutely stock LM7. What can it take spray wise? I never run one on a stock one. The problem is you're not going to make very much power. The LM7 is only going to make like 350 horsepower the way that we run it on the engine dyno. And then, you know, even if you had a 200 shot, that's 550. We've run 300 shots on junkyard motors, but we ran 300 shots on junkyard 5.3s. They were carbureted versions, but they had cams in them. And the reason that we're able to run that much nitrous is because we increased the power output of the NA motor. You get to a point where the motor won't process any more nitrous because as you add nitrous, you decrease airflow. And so it won't process any more nitrous. You get to a limit of its processing ability. And so having one with a camshaft in it and running nitrous, even if all the rest of the stuff is stock, you're going to need springs with a camshaft. It will allow you to be able to run more nitrous. So who stepped up with $20? Did I see that? That's crazy. Dan, thank you very much. I'm sorry if I didn't recognize you, in fact. Andy, I just came across another guy's motor today. A 2010 Chevy started making an 8-liter. An 8-liter that's not an 8.1. It's a 10.2 deck height Gen 6 block with LS firing order. Yeah, I didn't know about that. I'll have to look into that. You're sure that it's not an 8.1? Oh, okay, so we got to do a poll, obviously. Okay, here's the poll. Did the Super Richie RAM spacer make more, this thing right here, the Super Richie RAM spacer, make more peak power than the Wilson tapered combo spacer on the 5.3? So that's our poll for tonight. And like I said, it needs a better name. Oh, somebody said something about electric supercharger. I want to see what that is. There's a channel building an electric supercharger, and on a dyno test, the intake temperature dropped on the run when it was engaged. Did it make boost? If it made pressure, you can't have lower temperature, lower than ambient temperature when you have pressure. The only way to do that is to cool it somehow. So unless it was going through some sort of transfer medium that was lower temperature than what the air temperature was, that can't happen. And it doesn't matter what it's being driven by. It does that with a centrifugal blower or a Roots blower or a turbo, or the one exception is the compressed air supercharger, but that's not really a supercharger. Dan, I'm building a 402 L76, 550 horsepower, and I'm putting 800 horsepower shot of nitrous through it. I'd like to see that. That would be interesting. Do you think 110 using a progressive nitrous control, I could get away with the 150 shot without pulling timing? I don't know why you wouldn't pull timing. You're not going to lose power from the timing. You're going to gain safety. If you run it only on 110, I would feel better on a 150 shot, not pulling any timing. But like I said, you're not going to lose very much power pulling timing. There's no reason not to do that. Yeah, Dan, that's why I was being nice. We already know, Casey, we already know that Richard will never, last night was a perfect example that I'll never get 100% on these polls. Richard, do you think a supercharged 462 valve stock bottom end making 399 horsepower could take an additional 50 shot of nitrous? Yes, it could, especially if you take timing away. But we've made way more than 400 horsepower. We've had 462 valves that make 400 horsepower NA. Then we run Vortex and Kenny Bells on them that make it like 650 or 700 or whatever. And then they would easily take another 50 shot. We did that on a 4-valve motor. The max lift is around 750 on 781 heads on a factory valve guide. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I've run so few factory big block heads. I don't know what retainer to seal clearance is. Looks like you knocked a parking lot pole. This is just like 4-inch muffler tubing. And the cheapest Home Depot 28 gauge steel that I could find. What is, Tyler, what's going on, man? Talk to me. What's going on? Let's see. Can you add a don't know option? I can't. They don't allow me to do that. Pull timing or pull pistons? Yeah, that's good. At the moment, I don't have a way to pull timing. Yeah, you do. You can turn the distributor. Turn the distributor. If we put a light on top of it, yeah. I want to get it to somebody that's going to put it in like a rat rod or something. And this is awesome. This is why I love Brule. Brule's recommendation, and he was even going to call to try to make this happen, is because we knew that this was going to be a super bog deal. And to roll into it, I had to, for the dyno, you got to roll into it really, really, really easy so that it doesn't like misfire and stuff. But he wanted to put one of those, I think K&N had like a micro fueler or the additional injector or the air fuel deal. So it's like another little injector that goes down to the bottom. And so he was talking about just putting that back in and having it, it runs it on a feedback. So when the thing leans out, it would inject a bunch of additional fuel. And the nice thing is that it would spray it in at the bottom where it really needs to be. So that would help a lot. I was thinking about just getting a squirt bottle and run a tube in there just so we could get some kind of fuel in there. But as it turned out, it all worked out. Positive's not at 8.1. It was a crate motor. It's a tall deck, Gen 6 block. Cool. What spark plugs you run on the boosted LS and what gap? The gap is down around 19. And we have some, I've run NGKs on stuff, but we have Denso Iridiums that they gave the guys at West Tech. So, they were priced right. But I've used the 31s and 29s, which is a 10 and a 9 heat range, and they work fine. I watched the 4-foot Mega Ram. It was within 40 horsepower of a regular one. Make that into a chili bomb myself. Just put some 5-inch over the top, tapered with a bung at the bottom. But you need a heat exchanger in there though. Send which motor to you? This one? That's we don't even know if that runs yet. That's just mocked up. Is there any way on the LS that you could fool something that would make it pull timing? You could do that with a temp sensor, I think. Yeah, the Dodge Demon uses the air conditioning stuff. Everybody brings that up. Frosty cold beverage in the house. Knock tensors will pull a lot of timing. How do we make them activate with the nitrous? Casey, I've seen that, the Ducati Eleanor. 799 or 241 heads on an LS1. It depends on what you're doing. A 799 head would ultimately make more power, but it's not going to be a big upgrade on 241. Lucky for you, you can see what a comparison is between those two heads because I have that video up where we ran a 799, a 241, a 706, and a 317 head, and they're all the data is there. It is empty now, Todd. So they could, on the knock sensor, you could rig up like a little spring-loaded trip hammer and just have it smack it so it hears knock, and then it would retard the timing, right? I replaced the brake pads, calipers, and actuators of a 2020 Lexus LS500, but I keep hearing clicking and knocking every time I stop. You need to see if something's loose. Did you leave the, there are little pad retainers. You need to see if you left those out or if they're installed incorrectly. Yeah, I wouldn't. That's a good idea, Mike. Just if you're going to run nitrous on it, just don't run all the nitrous right away. Run a little bit and then a little bit more, and then see if you only hurt a piston a little bit before you hurt it a lot. Nice cam video you posted earlier. Thank you very much. Kind of piece of all thread work to keep the lifters. I think if it's sized right, most people use dowels, either wood ones work really good. We actually have, and I'm surprised that nobody has reproduced these, but there was a company that made these slide-in retainers for them, and they were aluminum, and they had a little flat on the end of them so you could pull them out. The problem I found with those is I had to remachine them with a grinder, because the different lifters, the way that the depth that they have and the shape of the body of the lifter are different, the factory ones and the aftermarket ones. So a lot of times it didn't want to slide in on some of the lifters. Richard, how much does it cost to fill a nitrous bottle? These, I don't know. I haven't taken it to a nitrous filling place. You don't know what you're looking at? It's directions for the fuel to go. Just go this way. Jet saying it's $5 a pound. Way back when you could get a roller lifter with really lightweight springs under the bars. So when you pulled up the push rods, the lifters came up out of the holes, so you don't pull the intake. Yeah, I thought it was more than $5 a pound. How is our poll doing? 112 votes. 65% are saying no, that the Richie Super Ram didn't make more power. Yeah, these guys are probably pretty sharp. Zip tie. So you just paid $55 to have a 10-pound bottle filled. Nice. The MSD 6014 controllers have a map port, and you can set it to pull timing under boost. The one that I ran, I don't know what the part number is. I can go look, but it will work on the early and late ones, the Gen 3 and Gen 4, the different trigger wheels and the different cam wheels and stuff. So it's nice, and it has a bunch of different selections on it. Although I don't really like the little dials on them, but it will also do. It also has an internal map, so it will pull timing under boost. The Crane Fireball 302 cam for the 351 Cleveland was the best sounding cam ever. Richard, you cracked three exhaust valves on my single GT35 InstaBoost LM7. So did it have boost at idle? Too much back pressure for sure. Yep, that would be a problem. May try porting the exhaust housing. So blast to drive. Why don't you just put a bigger turbo on it? Or put a second one of those that comes on later. Richard, have you heard of Heretic Brewery in Vacaville? No, I'm not a beer drinker, so I don't know of any of them in Vacaville. Fascious pendant. Isn't there some sort of piggyback device to modify the cam and crank signal to retard timing? You could build an Arduino to do it. What's the difference between a small block and a big block? They're different engine families and they're different bore spacings. Any luck getting interviews going? Not down here at West Tech. Oh, so you had lunch there? I'll have to check it out. So maybe we should go, let's go and make a dyno poll, because I know everybody wants to see that, right? You got to walk in. Check this out. This is definitely other guys' material. They're going to run this, but this is definitely cool. Are you ready? Are you ready? Where are my FE guys? Ta-da! Look at that. Ooh, ah. That is an FE, a stack injected FE with fuel injection and coil packs. Yeah. Yeah, you know you like it. You know you do. That's right. Okay, everybody guess how big it is. How many cubic inches is that? And we're guessing, and we're guessing, and we're guessing. How many cubic inches is the FE? Da, 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 da. Okay. That's what other people have. This is what Richie has. Yeah. L33, that's right. What's everybody saying? 427, 410, 427, 455, 510, 511. So Price is Right rules. 390, 427, 351, 496, 452. I think it's 527 or 29 cubic inches is what they said, if I remember right. So right now we're running this stock throttle body, stock truck intake, 799 heads, L33. But before we ran this. This is what all the cool kids are wanting to run. Yeah, whoa. Dual plane. That's what the oil looked like. We'll go play in the oil. Yeah, not good. If anybody remembers Arco Graphite, that's about what that looks like. It's not good. What? Oh, I did something really cool today. I wish I could show you guys. It will be in the video though. But you can see here. So the ladder that I normally have this thing on when I'm doing the live feed, I had the ladder on one side, and I had that toolbox over on the other side. And then I had a 4x4 bridged across the two. I had everything zip tied, for safety. And then what I did was take my phone and zip tie my phone to the underside of the 4x4, and then had it positioned right over the carburetor. And while we were making a pull, I got to video all the stuff that's going on with the carburetor, which was super cool. So that might be our poll for tomorrow night. We got a carburetor question for you. It was super cool though. So I'll see if I can get this thing running. I'm not a tuner, so but I play one on TV. Boom. Got to make sure she has water in her and fuel. So hopefully we will work out. Whoa, full throttle. Okay, and we're off and running. So can you guys see? There we go. So it's alive! So we'll let it warm up, put some temperature in it. You know, it needs to have you know, reasonable amount of cool temp. Actually, the thing we want to do is run it a little bit to get some oil temperature in it. I'm not too concerned about the water temperature. That's pretty easy. But it hasn't been run in a little bit, so we want to make sure that we get some oil temperature in it. I'll show you guys. So right now, got 61 pounds of oil pressure at 2,000 RPM. Coolant temp is 120. It's got about 38, 39 foot-pounds of drag on it right now. Air temp 68 degrees. Baro's 2898. Air fuel 12.6, 12.7. Can maybe move you guys a little bit closer so you can read that a little better. I can't really see the motor though because you're kind of low. So hopefully we have enough fuel for the run. Right at the edge. Whoa! So, nice smooth curve. Now it's 423. It'd make a little bit more if I put more heat in it and got more oil temperature in it. I think it made 424 or 5 or something. Kind of torquey. This is a good little motor. That's a nice curve. But you can see we ran it to 6,700, but it's making peak power at 6,200. But out at 67, it only fallen off to 416. So it had fallen off by 7 horsepower there. So that's still usable power out there. It's just that that's past the power peak. Peak torque was here at 411 foot-pounds at 4,700 RPM. And down at 3,000, it was 369 foot-pounds. So good little motor. So now that's going to get boost. So I've got to go shut her down now. Whoa. You guys behave. Yeah, big 5.3 power. What's the signal in here, I'm wondering? He's getting the Ellis ready for his truck. The motor is the easy part. Yeah, power runs. Add some boost, some boostage. Boost is the word. Okay. Have a good day. Look how short I am. There we go. Try to get mostly blue. There we go. Tom, what's up? Put the torque tube on the throttle body. I've tried those before, actually. I did a big air intake comparison on the LS before and tried 3.5 and 4-inch tubes and radius air horns and different lengths and all kinds of stuff. And it was like, not too thrilled. Think that will hit 500 horsepower with a carburetor? It won't. Not with this camshaft, it won't. There we go. That's a little better. 500 horsepower from that motor with those heads on it would take a lot. I don't know if you could put enough camshaft in it to, with the available piston to valve clearance. Maybe you could. Maybe with a really good single plane on there and the stock as cast heads, you might be able to do that. How much more power would make if you put water wetter in it? Donate me the stock 4.8 harness. Help a brother out. I don't have any. If that is directed at me, I don't have any stock harnesses. I never get harnesses when I go to the wrecking yard. I only get the motors. Is there much of a power difference between a double pumper and a vacuum secondary? A lot of times we have to manually manipulate the vacuum secondaries to get them to open on the dyno. We try putting really light springs and all that on there, but if they're both open and they both flow enough and both provide the right amount of fuel, meaning that they're tuned right, they should make similar power. The overcompensator. Getaway had an odd question and asked me the other day, should one retain oil squirters on an LSA block? I like oil squirters, and I would use them on any application that already had them. I've never put them on a motor that didn't have them, but on all the Honda stuff, we always ran them. I did some interesting adjustments today, and you guys will see that in the video with when we ran this thing, this silly thing over here. We did some adjustments on the squirter because you'll see in the video that at wide open throttle, we were getting fuel pulled through the squirters. My buddy wants to build a turbo LSA with an LS3 intake. So is an LSA and does it have a LS3 heads? If that's the case, then you can do that. Yeah, there's no downside to a cooler piston. I mean, I suppose you have to calculate how much oil flow that is. How, it's a constant loss basically. But like I said, on the Honda stuff, we always ran them. The LSA is a rec port. So why couldn't you put the LS3 intake manifold on there? Jeff, what we did on the Honda, because I ran some stroker motors for some specific things, and we would actually notch the skirt on the piston so that it didn't hit. Dan, wait till you see the video. The thing that I'm most excited, like that is the most exciting piece of photography or videography that I've done. The setup was very awesome. I took pictures of it, but having the camera positioned right above it and watching it during the whole run. I showed Brule, and he's like, "Oh yeah, he said make sure that the squirters have the spring loaded deal that has lash on it." I said, "Yeah, they do. It's drawing fuel through there anyway, so it's got to be siphoning it." And so we got to talk about that and geek out on the footage. What did I miss? How did it only make? Why would it make more than 425 horsepower? Hondas usually delete squirters. I don't know. That's not an accurate statement. We ran forged pistons on all the Bonneville stuff and we kept our squirters. Are you planning on testing the BTR intake? I don't think I don't have a motor that can rev that high, I don't think. What horsepower and torque did your last Honda make? You mean the most it ever made? I don't know what you're talking about. The one that we ran at Bonneville made 725 on the engine dyno, but at very high boost, and we never ran it that high at Bonneville. The way that it ran, when we ran it at Bonneville, when it went 227, it was only running about 17 pounds. This spacer actually did work. Oh, so I need to close out the poll because it's almost time to go here. Did the Super Richie Ram spacer make more peak power than the Wilson tapered combo? No, it did not, although it was close. So we'll end our poll there. I'm very excited about how well it did work. I thought it you know, having seen the divided single plane results, I was thinking that this was going to misfire and have problems, but it didn't. It actually worked very well. The power curve was very similar, and the numbers are very similar to what it did with no spacer and what it did with the spacer, because that's the other thing that you'll see when I do this spacer video is that a big open common plenum single plane intake manifold doesn't respond dramatically to a 1-inch open spacer on top of it. It's just doing more of what the intake manifold's already doing. And so that didn't do very much. And then even that didn't do very much. So to me, that's a win. This torque tube, like I said, it did work. I don't know that I would want to drive it around though. The response is the tip end's a little problematic. I've never tested a flat plane crank. The 4.8s work good. If you had a chance to LS swap with a turbo, and I have a 4.8 LR4 right now, a good 4.8 would be, would you hold out for the 5.3 build the 4.8? You don't need to hold out for it. Just go get one from a wrecking yard if you can do that. Or the 4.8 will make more than enough power. I mean, we've made 1,200 with those, and there are guys that have made lots more than that with those things. So the 4.8 can make good power. It's just softer, and the bigger the turbo that you put on there, the less responsive the smaller motor is. But for a normal size combination, a normal size turbo and a realistic combination, the 4.8 works good. Dan, I think we need 2 of those accelerator pumps. No rockers. There's no lot of things on there. That head is just a mock-up head. That's the 4.8 that I'm putting back together. Is 91 octane enough for a 10.5 to 1 compression big block with aluminum heads? Yes, we run that stuff like that all the time. No pizza tonight, Tom. Didn't I hear the FE was 525 inches or so? Why wouldn't it make over 425 horsepower? I'm sure that it would. That's not what I ran, though. For 700 horsepower on a 4.8, you could use a GT35. You could use a cheap turbo, and it will work on that. I haven't seen the red-green show. Do I know the results of the FE? It hasn't been run yet. The FE hasn't started yet. Dude, the tube needs a big screw in it. The Egyptian water pump. With all this testing and information, are you planning a book, a course, a video series? I'm doing videos for YouTube. I've already written 10 books, so that's not the way to go. I've called the question, and this will be the last question for tonight because I got to get going. Have you and Gail Banks ever linked up? I've met Gail many times. I called them, in fact, when I wanted to do a draw through turbo. I was hoping he had some of the old Ray J stuff from way back. And I've been over to his place and seen the facility. It's amazing. Obviously, he's a sharp guy. I would like to do stuff with him. He would be one of the guys that I would interview, I think. And also stuff with Tom Nelson, who I like, and we've talked many times on the phone. I'm trying to convince him to let me bring over a junkyard LS to put all of his alien intake and all that stuff on there, because he's got some mirror image turbos that he's trying to market, and I think that would be a good combination, because I would put it on a motor like maybe this 4.8 that I don't care about, and just have him go crazy on it. So Racer, I shouldn't start watching Red Green. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. The Nova winners in the house. Oh, and that's the last thing I'm going to say for tonight is going through all of when we were doing the giveaway last night on the Nova, we went through all of the, arbitrary math or whatever so that we could pick the winner. And thank you guys for that, because that was awesome. And it turns out that the guy that won the thing, and I didn't know this until, because if you were watching the video last night, I made sure that I sent a email from the entry email that he sent in once I went down through all the numbers and got rid of all the people that we had got rid of, and then got down to the last 3 people that were winning. And then when I selected his name, I sent him an email from that email to make sure that it's the same guy, because sometimes guys do this. I've had this happen before. The guy said, "Oh, it's me, I won," on a shirt or something. And I'm like, "You're not the guy that won," because I went back and looked. But after I sent him an email, he responded, and he lives like 35 or 40 miles away. So he'll definitely be able to, it'll be easy for him to pick it up. And I didn't know him and I've never met him, but it will be another car guy. Yeah, if you want to find the books, you can. They're available on Amazon and stuff. They're sold in a lot of places. And if you Google my name and look up there, I did 3 of them on Hondas. I did one on the Focus. I did one for Ford on their short track power stuff. I did the original one that I did was 5-liter Mustang. I've done a couple of LS books. What else besides the Hondas stuff? I think that's probably 10. Oh, Hemi, the Gen 3, and this is before the Gen 4 stuff that I call it, was really kind of out. So lots of Gen 3 stuff. And they're all very similar. There's chapters dedicated to different subsections of performance. So there's stuff on air intakes and throttle bodies. There's stuff on intake manifolds. There's things on, and these are all just back-to-back dyno tests on comparisons. Cylinder heads and camshafts and naturally turbos and blowers and nitrous and then engine builds and stuff. So there's a lot of that information. You guys, if you're going to get those books, have probably seen most of this stuff, because I've also done videos on the dyno results of that stuff, because that's, that's how I keep busy. Okay, guys, I got to get going. Thank you guys all for showing up. Make sure to check out the LS cam install video, and then let me know if I left anything out of the video, something that I need to update or another video that I need to do. So let me know along those lines if there are other, kind of back to basic stuff, because you're basic. Thanks, guys. I'll see you all tomorrow.